Cultural similarities in art. When you compare the art from different cultures around the world, does something seem oddly similar about them? From stars and moons to themes like death and rebirth, some symbols seem to find their way into everyday life of cultures all around the world. Even though you might not think of architecture as art, similar pyramid structures found in Indonesia, Mexico, and Egypt show that even though they may be worlds apart, distant cultures used similar buildings to house their leaders and honor their dead. The stepped pyramid used multiple platforms and had a massive staircase as its main feature. In Egypt, these were the first pyramids built by the pharaohs, later replaced by the smooth side structures at Giza, which became the most infamous ancient structures of the country. But why were the stepped pyramids so similar to those found in other countries who seemingly had no connection to ancient Egypt? Another similar stepped pyramid is El Castillo at Chichen Itza in Mexico. Built between the 8th and 12th centuries as a temple to the deity Kukulkan, El Castillo looks almost identical to the stepped pyramids in Egypt. And when you compare them to the stone pyramids found in Indonesia, it's easy to see how different cultures shared a lot of the same architectural inspiration as a way to stay in touch with the spirit of their ancestors. Cultural similarities aren't just found in the way structures are built though. Paintings of the Egyptian goddess Isis are strikingly similar to the statue of a mythological being in Ecuador. The sculptures of the feathered serpent at Chichen Itza look an awful lot like the dragon sculptures found in Bali. Even though these creatures are located in completely different parts of the world, and their beliefs are not the same, looking at their art and architecture, you can see how recognizable symbols and designs can connect us all as humans.
Cat worship across the world. Spoiling your adorable pet cat isn't just a modern practice. If you've ever had a cat, you already know how regal they can act, and why wouldn't they? The kitties we know and love were way more than just pets back in the day, but we're talking thousands of years ago, a time when human beings once worshipped cats like gods. Cat worship in ancient Egypt is one of the most popular instances we know of today. In the old city of Heliopolis, cat goddesses like Bastet, Sekhmet, and Madfet were highly revered. Each goddess helped the natives with a different need. For example, goddess Tefnut was worshipped for providing moisture to the land. It helped people with drinking water and growing their crops. Some deities were also portrayed as warriors that protected the people of ancient Egypt. The Greeks also worshipped cats and believed that the goddess Hecate had mutated into a cat while attempting to escape from Typhon's murderous rage. Hecate was the goddess of witchcraft as well as the goddess of the hunt, so while escaping, she kept a special favor for cats. As you can see, when it comes to cats, the Egyptians and Greeks had quite a bit in common. Similar to those from the West, the Chinese were also cat worshippers. In the ancient Book of Rites, a cat god named Li Xiao is mentioned. He was the guardian of families and protected the food crops that sustained life. Li Xiao kept pests and mice away from the crops and was especially worshipped by the farmers for his service. You can still find depictions of Li Xiao throughout China through thousands of guardian lion statues that represent the ancient cultural belief people had in Li Xiao's power as the protector of all. While the cat god did his thing in China, there was Ovinik in the Polish land. Ovinik was seen as the guardian of barns and domesticated animals. Ovinik was offered several gifts and offerings to keep him from burning down crops he was asked to protect. If you're picturing Ovinik to be a beautiful golden furball, then we're sorry to disappoint you. He was given the form of a fat black cat with piercing yellow eyes, which explains why Russians feared and despised him, even thinking he was the devil's aid. It's amazing how a cat was regarded with such a high-ranking position. Are they really that powerful? Did the rose bush in the backyard wilt away because my cat was upset with me? It makes you think.
The Star of David. The Star of David, also known as the Magen David, which means Shield of David in Hebrew, is the most identifiable symbol of Judaism in the modern world. Just like the sign of the cross is the universal symbol of Christianity, the Star of David is often worn by Jews and appears on the Israeli flag. But the Magen David wasn't always an exclusively Jewish symbol. It was the Jewish community of Prague, in what is now the Czech Republic, that adopted the Star of David as their official symbol in the 17th century. Before that, this symbol had a history that spanned countries, cultures, and religious beliefs. Long before the Jewish faith and Zionists adopted the symbol, the Magen David appeared in ancient Eastern cultures. The Buddhists used the symbol of the six-pointed star to represent peace and harmony, and it can still be found in decorative works. The six-pointed star was also a popular symbol in pagan traditions, was used often decoratively in churches built during the 1st century, and was also used occasionally in Muslim culture. So, while we may be surprised to see this now universally acknowledged symbol of Judaism in places like ancient Christian churches, mosques, Buddhist temples, or pagan ritual sites, before the 17th century Jews of Prague, this was completely normal, and in some places remains the case today. Sheila Nagig, a strange type of medieval carving meant to protect people from evil, has been adopted by feminists who want to remind the world about the struggles women have faced. Known as Sheila Nagig, the carvings would probably have been quite shocking in medieval times. They show a naked woman squatting and pulling open her enlarged labia. Yikes. Even more shocking is the fact that the carvings were often found on churches, castles, and gateposts throughout Ireland and the UK. Dating back to the 11th century, the figures were considered grotesque and a way to warn the public about the sins of lust. But others think they could be more of a fertility symbol, and a powerful one at that. Given the fact that in the not-so-distant past, thousands of unmarried mothers and their children were horrifically abused at group homes in Ireland by the state and the Catholic Church, it's no wonder modern feminists want to take back the power of Sheila Nagig. Hoping to bring a more positive, empowering tone to the symbol, Project Sheila is a street art movement that tasks creators with crafting clay representations of Sheila with gold-lustered labia and colorfully glazed vulvas. The sculptures were then placed on buildings and at sites where women experienced oppression. Using this shocking symbol as a way to take their power back is a modern way of bringing the past into the light and showing how modern women are unapologetically sexual beings.
Distance between Sun and Earth. The distance between the Sun and Earth is a complex calculation that only brilliant mathematicians can calculate. After all, you can't just pull out a measuring tape and mark the distance, right? So how was it possible for ancient civilizations to do it? Not just one, but communities across the globe made several claims and calculations with regards to celestial bodies and their positions. Some of these also coincide with real figures. They may not have been completely accurate, but without any technical help, computers, or even calculators that we have today, the feat they achieved was pretty impressive. If it wasn't for the internet, we'd have to heavily depend on our school texts for this kind of info. So let's get into the who's and what's of ancient astrophysics. People in ancient Greece were among the first to try and build a model of the cosmos. Their tool of choice? The naked eye. They thought the moon could be larger since it appeared so much closer. The sun looked to be of the same size, but was brighter. So smart as they were quick to conclude that maybe the sun was larger, but much farther away. With the invention of geometry, what were once vague descriptions started turning into precise measurements. In the 2nd century BCE, astronomer Hipparchus established the use of a method known as parallax. He observed the moon from 2 different cities and used geometry and parallax to compute the distance to the moon. With that out of the way, another astronomer named Aristarchus tried his luck at determining the Earth's distance from the sun. His answer was off by a few thousand increments. Much later in the 15th century, the accurate distance was found written in a Hindu text called Hanuman Chalisa. Authored by Goswami Tulsidas, the text mentions the exact value of the distance, but it was mentioned 2 centuries before modern scientists calculated it. Also, Rig Veda, which is one of the most revered texts dating back to 1500 to 1000 BCE, not only gives details of the distance between the sun and the earth, but also the diameter of the sun and the moon, and several details of the planets and the solar system as a whole. Most calculations coincide with the accurate figures that we know today. Considering we are talking about quantifiable measures, it's simply unbelievable how some of the calculations made thousands of years ago line up with modern knowledge.
Mark Twain and Halley's Comet. There's something oddly spooky about celestial bodies making predictable passes in plain view of the casual observer looking up at the night sky. This idea is no different when it comes to Halley's Comet. Halley's Comet was first discovered in 1758 by English astronomer Edmund Halley. It visibly passes the Earth every 74 to 75 years. It was last seen in 1986 and won't be seen again until 2061. Okay, so that's the basic rundown. But where's the coincidence in a predictable comet? Oddly enough, in 1835, Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, was born. The same year, Halley had made her pass by the Earth, burning her bright blue light into the sky. While Mark Twain was well known as one of the greatest American authors and humorists that ever put pen to paper, he was also a touch of a fortune teller, with this now famous quote: "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It is coming again next year, and I expect to go out with it. It will be the greatest disappointment of my life if I don't go out with Halley's Comet." The Almighty has said, no doubt. Now, here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together, they must go out together. And by the sheer power of coincidence, he was correct. Twain died a year later in 1910 from a heart attack, only a day after Halley's brightest day. There are a slew of other theories and predictions based on Halley's Comet, but that's for another video. Hercules and Diomedes. In Palazzo Vecchio, a palace built in 1299 in Italy, one of the most stunning displays of art is found in the Hall of the 500. The largest room in the palace, it features a dazzling display of murals by Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo. Among the stunning gold-framed artworks, there is a series of statues that depict the labors of Hercules, with one that continues to turn heads. In it, Hercules, the embodiment of Greek freedom and heroism, is wrestling with Diomedes, who was considered a tyrant for feeding the poor to his flame-spitting horses. But the most eye-catching thing about the statue? Both figures are stark naked, with Hercules holding Diomedes upside down, and Diomedes tightly gripping Hercules' penis, depicting one of the 12 labors of Hercules, who had to undertake the trials to atone for killing his wife and children. The statue is one that you won't soon forget. But even if it looks like Hercules is in a compromising position, he does in fact toss Diomedes to his own flesh-eating horses, thus completing the trial and coming out the victor. The depiction isn't the only one to show off risque art. In many Greek artworks, depictions of homosexuality are prevalent. The Parthenos cup, found in 525 to 475 BCE, shows a scene of both heterosexual and homosexual courtship on the exterior, with two men intertwined in a compromising position, which was a common theme found in ancient Greek art. Even though you might find it odd, the artistic appearance of the phallus in ancient art symbolized good luck, health, and sexuality. Have you ever seen any of these statues in person? What did you think about them? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already.
Early flying machines. We all know the Wright brothers flew the first plane, but were they the first to design one? Apparently not. Flying machines, airplanes, aircraft, whatever you call it, have been mentioned in ancient relics and on-cave inscriptions time and again. They might not be the same as the ones we use today, but according to this evidence, those machines could fly. One of the earliest mythological mentions is the infamous wings of Daedalus. He used tied bird feathers and sealed them together with wax to fly like a bird. Indian legends mention a flying chariot called Vimana. Known as the Chariot of Gods, there is an ancient text that solely focuses on aeronautics. The Sanskrit scripture had 8 chapters talking about different theories of aeronautics, including strategies to engage in if airborne or ground attacks were to happen. Erich von Däniken was one of the critical writers who could not emphasize enough the various depictions of spacecrafts and planes from several ancient civilizations. Whether it's the pyramids of Egypt or the Moai on Eastern Island or Stonehenge, Though living miles away, with possibly no means of contact, all these ancient sites bear some references to flying machines. Now, whether these aircraft belong to the human race or from outer space, that's a story for a show like Ancient Aliens.
The unsinkable woman. Violet Constance Jessup, born October 2nd, 1887, was considered the unsinkable woman after surviving 3 extreme naval disasters. By winning the worst lottery fate could offer, she was aboard the RMS Olympic in 1911, the RMS Titanic in 1912, and somehow the HMS Britannic in 1916, when they all suffered horrible accidents. Every single ship was owned by the transatlantic ship company White Star, where reluctantly Jessup got a job as a stewardess. During the 5th crossing of the Olympic, Jessup experienced her first major accident at sea. The largest ship of its time crashed into the HMS Hawke, poking holes in the Olympic's watertight compartments like tissue paper. Thankfully, although no one aboard was injured or killed, some could consider the event an omen for Jessup's career at sea. However, Jessup was undeterred, and a few friends convinced her to join up with White Star's brand new ship, the Titanic. Thanks to a fairly famous movie, we all know what happens next aboard the Titanic. However, Jessup's story is a touch different from the movie's Jack and Rose. This is what Jessup recalled about that fateful night. I was ordered up on deck. Calmly, passengers strolled about. I stood at the bulkhead with the other stewardesses, watching the women cling to their husbands before being put into the boats with their children. Sometime after, a ship's officer ordered us into the boat, first to show some women it was safe. As the boat was being lowered, the officer called, "Here, Miss Jessup, look after this baby," and a bundle was dropped onto my lap. Jessup was rescued roughly 8 hours after the sinking of the Titanic, and amazingly went back to work at sea with the British Red Cross as a nurse during the First World War. While aboard the Britannic, the ship was hit by an underwater mine and began sinking rapidly. Jessup jumped to a lifeboat without the order of the captain and somehow survived. Jessup continued working at sea for another 43 years and died in 1971 at the age of 83. Talk about a wild history on the water. Do you think you'd go back to working as a ship's crew member after all of that? The Pompeii phalluses. When researchers began excavating the ancient Roman city of Pompeii, they were looking for the remains of those buried by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. But they found something else that they weren't really expecting. A large number of preserved artworks of the penis. But why were there so many phallic symbols in the ancient city? Found on walls, on stone streets, and even above doorways, the phallic symbols are believed by some to be for those looking for one of Pompeii's brothels. Apparently, one only had to follow the direction the symbols were pointing to find their own happy ending. But others are skeptical about that explanation, believing they were instead a symbol of fertility, similar to the Sheila sculptures in Ireland. Perhaps these were a way for the local culture to get rid of the stigma of sexuality and nudity. But the racy sculptures aren't limited to ancient Pompeii. A recent discovery of a mosaic in a Roman bathroom shows an image of Narcissus, quite enchanted by the size of his member. Given the fact that Narcissus famously fell in love with his own reflection, which he stared at until he died, it's possible that being in love with his prowess was his ultimate downfall.
Curse of Hope Diamond. When you think of cursed objects, a blue diamond doesn't really come to mind, does it? However, the Hope Diamond has time after time brought strange occurrences and events to those who own it. Curse or coincidence? You decide. Worth over $250 million, this blue-hued diamond allegedly holds a sinister curse. According to legend, it was stolen from a Hindu temple in India by a priest. He was later caught and subjected to a slow and painful death. After his death, the diamond found a new owner and was handed to a French merchant. The merchant's fate wasn't very lucky either. Soon after getting the diamond, he was mauled to death by a pack of ferocious dogs. Before his death, he sold the jewel to King Louis XIV. The diamond stayed in the king's family right until the French Revolution. If you remember your history lessons from school, you'll know that during the Revolution, King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were publicly beheaded. The diamond then trickled down many generations and misfortunes before Evelyn McLean bought it for $180,000. McLean heard of the alleged curse the stone carried, but she wasn't bothered by it at all. She would soon change her mind as her children and husband died one after the other. After the series of misfortunes and her own demise, the stone was sold to pay off her debts. In 1958, the diamond landed in the Smithsonian Institution, so maybe the curse came to an end, right? Believers of the curse don't feel so. The Smithsonian Institution is under the government of the United States. Since it was put on display there, the USA has been through a number of turmoils, from wars, race riots, to assassinations of presidents. Could it possibly all be traced back to the diamond? We may never know. What do you think? If you're enjoying our video, don't forget to give us a like, share, and also, please do subscribe to our channel for more incredible historical discoveries. Now, back to the action.
Brothers in arms. The Great War, or World War I, was one of the bloodiest conflicts known to man. With an estimated 40 million people killed during the various World War I battles across the globe, it's only fitting that the first and last British soldiers to be killed be buried right next to one another. Private John Parr was the first British soldier to be killed in the war. Historians actually disagree on the exact cause of his death. However, it is generally agreed that he died from German rifle fire while searching for a missing unit. While his body was never officially identified, we do know that he was only 14 when he joined the British Army in a territorial unit of the Middlesex Regiment in 1912. He was most likely killed on the 21st of August 1914. On the flip side of the coin, Private George Edwin Ellison was the last man to be killed in the Great War, a mere 90 minutes before the official armistice call was sounded. Ellison was 40 years old at the time of his death and survived 4 long years of trench warfare, including some of the worst fighting at the battles of Ypres and the Somme. To make matters even stranger, he died at the same location of his first ever firefight as part of the British Expeditionary Force retreating from Mons. Really makes you think about how war is just an endless circle. Fountain of Neptune. The Fountain of Neptune in Bologna is just one of a number of fountains that depict women holding their breasts. Created in 1567 by Italian artist Tommaso Loretti, it's located in the Piazza Nettuno, the main square of the city's historical center, designed in the Mannerist style, which became famous for its depictions of distorted human forms and exaggerated poses. The statue features a lactating Nereid, who was a sea nymph and the daughter of one of the many gods who lived in the depths of the sea, considered symbols of protection, regeneration, and fertility. The nymphs were often depicted with large breasts. The design was done by Giovanni de Bologna, who was well known for his work in both marble and bronze, and was influenced by the work of Michelangelo. As you can see in his statues, Bologna certainly had a flair for the dramatic. Some may find his work funny or crass, but they are considered a powerful symbol of female strength.
Sundials. In our modern world, we're blessed with the convenience of watches, clocks, and phones to tell time. But how did people in the past figure it out? The ancient world looked at their shadows or at the position of the sun to determine what time of day it was. Though it worked pretty well, there was still a need for something better and something more accurate. It led to the invention of the sundial, the closest ancient timekeeping device we have to the modern watch. But the remarkable part about the sundial is that it wasn't restricted to a certain community or geographical boundaries. The device was invented around the world in several cultures in a similar time frame. The earliest ones date back to ancient Egypt around 1500 BC. Around the same time, many sundials were discovered in the territory of modern Russia. The device has also been mentioned in the Old Testament as the Dial of Ahaz. In Isaiah chapter 38 verse 8, it was likely of Babylonian or Egyptian design. In the East, the story isn't any different. Sundials also existed in China, but there aren't many historical records to describe how it came into existence. They were invented in ancient China in 800 BCE and eventually transformed into water clocks by 100 AD. The Greeks also developed many forms of the sundial. They had initially derived it from the Babylonian style, but thanks to their geometrical advancements, they were able to make it even better. Astronomer Theodosius of Bithynia had allegedly invented a sundial that could be used anywhere in the world. Considering all these ancient civilizations came up with the idea around the same time, that is one big coincidence.
Seth MacFarlane and Mark Wahlberg. It is a day that almost every American will never forget. September 11th, 2001. A day that almost took the lives of actor and musician Mark Wahlberg and the original creator of the hit animated show Family Guy, actor and comedian Seth MacFarlane, if it wasn't for these oddly specific coincidences. Mark Wahlberg, famous for being a singer and actor, was scheduled to fly on American Airlines Flight 11, the first plane to hit the Twin Towers. Through a last-minute decision to not fly to Los Angeles via New York, but instead to attend a film festival in Toronto, Canada, Wahlberg was able to avoid tragedy. Unfortunately, Wahlberg later received criticism for stating that he would have personally stopped the attacks from happening, saying, quote, "If I was on that plane with my kids, it wouldn't have gone down like it did. There would have been a lot of blood in that first-class cabin, and then me saying, 'Okay, we're going to land somewhere safely, don't worry.'" He later had to retract his comments and apologize for his statements after a public outcry. As for Seth MacFarlane, the coincidence is a bit simpler. While MacFarlane was scheduled to be on the same flight as Wahlberg, he had a few too many drinks the night before and was too hungover to get to the airport in time, missing his flight. That they both managed to avoid the flight ultimately allowed them to make the movie Ted together several years later. Fountain of Fertility, Villa d'Este, Tivoli. Another fountain similar to the Fountain of Neptune is also found near Rome. Located at the Villa d'Este, the Fountain of Fertility features a classical Roman statue of Diana of Ephesus, depicted with multiple breasts. Created in 1568, the statue shows the mother goddess Artemis with multiple smooth, oval-shaped bumps on her midriff, but there are some different interpretations of the fountain. Some scholars believe the bumps are her breasts, which would be natural given her symbolic position as one of fertility, but others believe the jets of water spurt from the testicles of bulls sacrificed to her. In classic mythology, she is considered the virgin huntress and protector of young girls. An ancient Greek city located in modern-day Turkey, Ephesus, is also the home to the Temple of Artemis, built to honor her. Just one of many stunning fountains, it is found within the palace gardens, which is considered one of the most remarkable displays of Renaissance culture. Go for the slightly risque statues, stay for the ornamental basins, refined culture, and beautiful 16th century gardens the next time you're in Tivoli.
Winged sun disk. Ancient symbols weren't just sketches or drawings, they held deep meaning and religious significance. Each culture and community had its own style of making those symbols, so it's truly surprising to see the same objects popping up in different centuries and geographical locations. The winged sun disk has been a common symbol in many cultures from the ancient world. It is one of the oldest symbols related to the sun and religion. You can find different variations of the sun disk across many communities, like the Sumerians, the Hittites, and the Assyrians. It is said to have signified omnipresence and was largely associated with the divine. The disk was also used to symbolize royalty and power in Egypt, Persia, Anatolia, and Mesopotamia. In the most common renditions in Egypt, it was depicted as a solar globe being carried on the wings of a hawk, the god Horus, along with the horns of god Amun. The winged sun disk was one of the main symbols for the main god of heaven, who was worshipped under many names in ancient Egypt. The symbol can be found carved over doorways on many temples and also Egyptian tombs. In Asia, Mesopotamia, and the Levant, the symbol appeared around the time of 2000 BC. It was considered a symbol of royalty by Assyrian rulers. The same symbol can be seen on Hebrew seals from the reign of Judah. During the times of Zoroastrian Persia, the winged sun disk was called the Farahar, which meant visual aspect of Ahura Mazda. Ahura Mazda was the supreme god in the Zoroastrianism faith. In some versions, the symbol was found to have the Egyptian symbol for the key of life on either side.
A dead man's luck. Anyone who's purchased a lottery ticket, or even one of the cheap scratch-offs you can find at the corner stores, has a brief flicker of hope that they will be the one to win that huge jackpot. For one man in 1998, that dream came true. but only after being declared clinically dead for 14 minutes. Bill Morgan from the Australian coastal city of Melbourne. After Morgan suffered a heart attack that left him clinically dead and then comatose for 15 days, he went to a corner store and purchased a $5 scratch-off lottery ticket and won a car worth 30,000 Australian dollars. At the time, no one made a big deal of it until local news channels got wind of the story. The news team wanted to get a shot of Morgan reenacting the original win by having him buy another scratch-off lottery ticket. With a massive stroke of coincidence, Morgan scratched off the winning numbers to reveal that he had won another 250,000 Australian dollars live on broadcast news. Bill is still alive today, and while his original winning video went viral, he is just happy to get the extra years to spend with his wife, and even routinely buys the same $5 scratch-off lottery tickets. What are the chances? Do you play lotto or buy scratch-off tickets? Have you ever won anything? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe for more content. Priapus, the fertility god of Pompeii. While most depictions in ancient art of phalluses are generally believed to be about fertility, one fresco found in Pompeii is believed to show a painful disease that was apparently widespread during ancient times. The 2,000-year-old fresco of Priapus, the Greek god of fertility, is shown with a large and constantly erect penis. Found in the ancient ruins at the end of the 19th century by archaeologists working on a large villa, the fresco portrays the god with a disproportionately large member that had a shut or closed foreskin that was supposed to be incredibly painful to the unlucky sufferer. But why did the artist decide to portray the Greek god of fertility in this way? Some experts believe it was done to protect others from suffering the same disease. While it might seem vulgar to depict a god this way, some believe it was the artist's way of warding off evil. Either way, the stark depiction of Priapus probably garners more double takes than the poor god would have liked.
The Curse of Tutankhamun. In 1992, Howard Carter, a British archaeologist, discovered the final resting place of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, or better known as King Tut. The 18-year-old pharaoh took his last breath around 1323 BC and was buried in the Valley of the Kings. Most tombs at the site had been looted and plundered, but this one was different. The tomb that Carter found was completely untouched. Carter's project was financed by the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. What lay in the tomb changed his life forever. The team found the pharaoh's mummified body, along with paintings and religious objects. This huge discovery sent the entire world into a state of frenzy, and soon stories of curses started trickling in. There was no actual curse inscribed on the tomb, but the rumors were enough to send shockwaves. Things took an unfortunate turn when the Earl of Carnarvon died a few years after the discovery was made. Was it the curse or just a coincidence? But this was not the only consequence of opening the tomb. It was only the beginning. A series of misfortunes began soon after. The alleged curse victimized the Prince of Egypt, Ali Kamel Fahmy Bey, who was shot in 1923 by his wife. Next, it was game over for Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, whose death in 1924 was also shrouded in mystery. He had apparently taken the X-ray of the mummy. This was soon followed by the assassination of the Governor-General of Sudan, Sir Lee Stack, in 1924 in Cairo. If you thought this was the end of it, you're wrong. Another member of Carter's team, Arthur Mace, died of suspicious arsenic poisoning in 1928. Carter's secretary also fell victim to the alleged curse. He was strangled in his bed in 1929. Carter's father, the very next year, committed suicide. Carter, however, dismissed the idea of the curse till his last breath. He died in 1939 of Hodgkin's disease. So, what do you think? Was Carter oblivious to the fact that he and the people around him might have been cursed to death? Do you believe in the mystery surrounding the curse and the mummy? Let us know in the comments below.
Plum pudding. A 19th century French poet by the name Émile Deschamps has probably one of the strangest set of coincidences on this list. Now, Deschamps is famous for two reasons. The first is his poem La Paix Conquise, written in 1812, which was so highly praised that it even caught Napoleon's notice. The other reason relates to an extremely English dessert, the humble plum pudding. A simple dessert made by combining milk, sugar, port or sherry, breadcrumbs, and of course, plums. This dessert is traditionally enjoyed in the foggy streets of London. An English immigrant to France with the extremely French-sounding name of Monsieur de Forquebus by chance introduces Deschamps to plum pudding when the poet was just a teenager. Years pass, and Deschamps is strolling past a cafe in Paris and sees they have plum pudding on the menu. He naturally walks in and orders one. However, the cafe had just sold the last one they have on hand to none other than Monsieur de Forquebus. The waiter even asks Forquebus if he was willing to share his plum pudding with Deschamps. Some years come and go, and Deschamps is at a dinner party with his friends, and the host announces the dessert for the evening is plum pudding. As a joke, Deschamps states that Forquebus must be at the party. Just then, without fail, Monsieur de Forquebus rings the doorbell. Forquebus wasn't even supposed to be at that particular dinner party. Just through pure coincidence, he had gotten the wrong address for an event he was in fact invited to. True nature of solar eclipses. Humans have long been fascinated with the incredible nature of the solar eclipse. The earliest recorded history of this fascination goes back to stone tablets in Babylonia around 2,500 years ago. Eclipses have both started and ended wars, created the backbone of religions, and have even been used to predict the future in the way of both good and bad omens. However, even with their spiritual and sometimes murderous history, they are nothing but a total coincidence. From our current understanding of the celestial duo, the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun, and the sun is 400 times the distance from the earth than the moon. According to astronomers at the University of Hertfordshire in the UK, this exact size and distance similarity is the main reason that we're able to see eclipses at all. To add to this coincidence layer cake, because the distances between the earth and the moon are always changing, in the next few million years, eclipses will look totally different. The fact that humans are alive at the exact time that the sun and moon are the exact distance away that we are able to look up at the heavens and view this strange phenomenon is a coincidence in itself. When life imitates art. There's an old adage that art often imitates life, and in the case of Edgar Allan Poe's 1838 book, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, that adage proved true, at least in reverse. Poe's book details a horrific tale of survival cannibalism with a 4-man sailing crew getting lost at sea with no food or water, and results in the characters resorting to killing and eating one of the crew members so the remaining crew may live. The character chosen to be eaten was named Richard Parker. The exact story happened in life to a 4-man sailing crew taking a small boat named the Mignonette from England to Australia in 1884. The Mignonette had to be taken the long way around because there were unsafe wind conditions in the Mediterranean Sea. Unfortunately for the crew of the Mignonette, they were sunk between the islands of St. Helena and Tristan da Cunha. The crew was left starving in a dinghy, and after 3 hungry weeks, the cabin boy, by the same fateful name of Richard Parker, fell ill, and the crew killed and ate him. Makes you wonder what books they had on board. The first and last battles of the Civil War. War never changes. While started for a plethora of reasons, they almost always end the same way. The only thing that does change is the locations and weapons. However, in the American Civil War, the same man, Wilmer McLean, got to see the war start on his front lawn and end in his parlor. On the evening of July 18, 1861, a Union cannonball came smashing through McLean's kitchen wall, ruining his fireplace, home, and, most importantly, his dinner. This single cannonball was the very beginning of the First Battle of Bull Run. McLean was a successful grocer that inherited a 1,200-acre plantation just south of Washington, D.C. He lived there quite happily with his wife and 2 daughters before the Confederate soldiers brought the war quite literally to their backyard. As the bulk of the battle was concentrated around his property, McLean and his family relocated to South Central Virginia to safely escape the front lines and rented out the house and barn to Confederate forces. However, the war would follow McLean and his family until the very end. In April of 1865, with Union forces surrounding General Lee and the remaining Confederate forces, they were forced to sign the surrender treaty in the nicest room they could find. The room was McLean's front parlor. Unfortunately for McLean, Union forces stole everything not nailed down in the house, including the very desk the treaty was signed on. McLean was forced to move again and lived the rest of his days as a tax auditor for the IRS until his death in 1882. While war never changes, it without a doubt changed McLean's. Thanks for watching. Which one of these coincidences do you find the most interesting? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already.